All right, beautiful people. We are here. We are here. We are here. Okay, we're gonna get started. It's 9:30. Thank you to everybody who is joining us live, joining me live. Thank you for having me, Aquaba, to my first ever ADNC live. Okay, let's mark this moment down in history. I'm really happy to be here with you all. This is a new feat, a new undertaking, and I really want to thank the ADNC family, the loyal subscribers and viewers who join my colleagues every night. And I'm hoping to be one of your faves as well on this channel. Let's get started. My name is Efia Tekyi-Annan, and I am the second born daughter of Dr. James Benjamin and Shemima Tekyi-Annan of Kumasi, Ghana. Now, the reason in which I introduce myself in this way is to show respect to my culture, and just in the fact that I have the ability to name my lineage. I can go about 3 generations back, four. I have access to four. Um, and I recognize that not everybody has that. So I do want to, definitely showcase that and just, how lucky I am, because for a lot of Black people, that's not their reality. So happy Africa Day, family. Okay. Um, let's talk about Africa. I don't want to just celebrate Africa because around the world, we know people are, look, I'm even in my kente. You can't really see the green because of my screen, but I came dressed in my kente. I came in my natural tresses for you guys today. Um, People are celebrating Africa, and this is something that we should be doing every day, but especially today on May 25th. But I really want us to start talking or continue the conversations around whose Africa are we building, who gets to belong, and who benefits. Although I'm new to this channel, I have dropped a few videos regarding, my thoughts around what's going on around Africa and places like South Africa as well, in Ghana. And I really want to get into some of those conversations. But first, y'all, make sure you head on over to my channel on YouTube as well and type in Fifi and Co. and come subscribe. This is where I talk about news and like very pertinent information. But my YouTube channel is more for travel and to see some of the leisure side of my life and some of the travels that I've endeavored on with my family. And just exploring the world as a diasporan. So make sure you guys head on over there. I really appreciate you all. As well as if you guys want to get to know me a little bit more, you guys can also join me on my Instagram at Fifi the Queen 92. And come kick it with me. Come see my day-to-day, what it's like. I'm a millennial diasporan, Canadian-born Ghanaian. I showcase my day-to-day life. Like life can be exciting if you want it to be, if you allow it to be, right? And I really want to be able to share my real life with people because I know I'm not the only one going through some of the things that I'm going through, you're going through, and really trying to build a community. So make sure you guys join me over there. So let's get into it. Africa Day is not just a cultural holiday, all right? It marks the founding of the Organization of African Unity, known as the OAU, now the African Union, or AU, that was founded by 32 heads of independent African states. So some of the well-known figures from that movement were Emperor Selassie from Ethiopia, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Julius Nyerere from Tanzania, Gamal Nasser of Egypt, and Abu Bakr Balawa from Nigeria. So that's just to name a few. Remember, I said there's 32 heads of independent African states that were involved in creating what we know now as the African Union. So the African Union describes Africa Day as commemorating the establishment of the OAU in 1963. And this took place, a charter was signed in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. And the AU continues to mark today, May 25th, as Africa Day. So originally the spirit was around anti-colonial unity, liberation, sovereignty, and African cooperation. well, here in 2026, we're looking at it like the questions need to be asked. It's no longer just about, are we free from colonial rule, right? It's more so along the lines of, are we economically, politically, and psychologically free? Because we are seeing that we're independent nations while we rely heavily on outside countries, colonizers, for most of the things, for our country's stability, for our country's medical needs, for our country's security needs, right? So are we really and truly free, or are we still living under that oppression? And now that's a question for y'all. I have my thoughts. That's a question for you guys. So just to go back into it, this is what the African Union flag actually looks like, right? So it's the continent in green and gold, right? We know that Africa is a large continent, okay, a huge continent. And just to see the size, there's been arguments about the size and what it looks like on a map and all that other stuff, but it's a large continent. All right, so when you hear Africa Day, what does it mean to you? Are we talking about celebration, liberation, frustration, or hope? What does it mean to you? In being on this channel and just in the research I've been doing as of late and the work that I do in the diaspora, I'm really coming to understand that Africa represents so many different things to different people. For me, it represents opportunity, it represents culture, heritage, my ancestry. For others, they're looking at it as somewhere they no longer want to be from or want to return to, right? Others look at Africa as a place of beginning, but not a place to thrive. And everyone has their reasons, you know? Everybody has their ideas of what Africa is and what it means to them and what it's capable of, right? I remember having a conversation with somebody about it, and we were talking about Canada, and they were so proud to be from Canada or to be living in Canada. And I was like, yeah, I'm so happy to be Ghanaian. I can't wait till I can go back. And their question to me was, why? And I get this a lot from Africans, actually. Africans from like I'm born in Africa. And it bothers me, you know? For them, they see the Western world as somewhere presenting their families with opportunity. These people usually are from war-torn parts of the continent. And so I can understand why they feel like Canada is a place of freedom for them, right? But someone like me who's from Ghana, one of the most peaceful countries in the world, I view it completely differently. So we want to talk about unity and Africa Day really beginning to heal wounds of those around the world and those on the continent as well. But we can start with one of the biggest contradictions. It's still easier for some non-Africans to move across Africa than it is for Africans themselves. So one of the interesting things that have happened is that Togo has announced that they are opening up their borders and making it visa-free for African passport holders. And the sad part is that they're joining a very small group of African countries that already do this. In fact, Togo is the 6th. So these are the 5 countries that have done that before them. So we have Kenya, Seychelles, Rwanda, the Gambia, and Benin. Okay. Now, Ghana also announced that they would have free visas. And I want you guys to know that there's an important distinction. Visa-free and free visas are not the same thing, okay? They announced in April that they're making visas free. And, you know, you still have to apply for an e-visa, right? And applying for the e-visa, you don't have to pay a fee if you're an African, but they still want to make sure they know who's coming into the country, right? So let's take a listen to what the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Honorable Samuel Abalakwa, had to say about.
The two don't mean the same. I've seen a lot of misconception out there. People say, oh, then we are going to be swamped and no, rethink this policy, because they are confusing free visa with visa free. Free visa simply means if you're an African, you don't pay the cost for the visa. You don't pay. Whereas our friends from other parts of the world will be paying about $250 when we roll out the e-visa regime. You as an African will not be required to pay the $250. But it doesn't mean that you will not go through the visa application process. You will go through, you will be vetted. Our consular officers will screen, will make sure that you meet the requirement, you don't have any criminal record, because remember, the system is linked to. So let me make clear that So
you heard him, right? He wanted to make sure he made it very clear that free visa doesn't mean visa free. Okay. And so he goes on to talk about the fact that there are concerns, and I did mention it in my other video that I did on South Africa, about traveling through Europe, and the EU has borderless countries, right? People are allowed to, within the EU, you can travel through, whether you're driving, you could be in Netherlands, then be in Luxembourg, then be in Germany, and nobody knows, right? So I did mention that there are a few like security risks behind that too. Like I hear it. Anybody comes in and then they're lost within the continent. You don't really know where they are. And that includes criminals, that includes human trafficking victims, that includes a lot of vulnerable populations of people. And so there are some concerns when it comes to that. So Ghana is saying, Africans, you can come to Ghana. We just want to make sure we know who you are when you're coming, right? And so I want to know what you guys think about that. Is that fair? Do you think that's smart? Or do you think that it's still some restrictions? Do you still think that that causes a barrier for others to come in and for Africa to be movement free, right? Visa-free movement isn't just about the tourism aspect. It's about whether Africans are allowed to build with each other. But open borders without planning can create tension, as we're seeing in South Africa, right? The goal should not be chaos. The goal should be organized Pan-Africanism with the mobility where Africans can travel, trade, work, invest, and live with dignity while host countries protect their jobs, security, housing, and public services, right? Like these are some of the complaints that we hear when we are hearing, oh, they're coming to take our jobs, they're overwhelming our housing, they're overwhelming our healthcare systems, right? And these things can be planned for if done well. So now I wonder, is the real question, should the real process be laid out in terms of what needs to be done in order for us to do these things? We can't just call for visa-free borders when we don't have systems in place, because this is how we get some of this xenophobia that we're seeing. And I've seen South Africa, but I'm going to get into it in another video. It's not just South Africa. I mean, Nigeria had they've called a whole bag, Ghana must go. So we've seen it before. And by the way, Louis Vuitton is selling Ghana must goes. I think it's for 2,000. Listen, if you guys want to buy, I will sell it to you for 500. I have lots in my garage. Ghana must go. They labeled a whole bag for the mass exodus movement that they had in Nigeria, right? And Ghanaians, we did the same thing to Nigeria too. So we're not innocent here either, but yeah. So we got to think about those things as well, right? There are a lot of things that need to be put in place. And do our current leaders, are they able to put those things in place? Are our governments sound enough for them to create these opportunities, these systems, in order for us to actually be visa-free, borderless continent? I don't think as right now we do. I don't think as right now that's possible. And I do think that it would take a long time to do it, but I do think it is something that we do need to look forward to, right? We can't keep talking about Pan-Africanism. It can't just be, stopping at flags and speeches, because they love to talk about it. If Africans can't move across Africa, then unity is just an idea, right? Like we need to take care of the practical reasons as to why that is not possible, while we also remove some of the negative rhetoric and narrative around it, around each other and around others and around foreign people, right? And for idea of who's a foreign person, right? While we talk about travel by Africans, like who else here has tried to travel, has tried to travel in the continental? Huh. So travel on the continent itself is expensive and very inconvenient. How many of you have had to fly out of Africa to go into another African country, just to come back to another African country? How many of you experienced expensive flights? How many of you guys have experienced using one or two airlines who have a monopoly and their customer service is basa basa, like it's not good, and yet there's still some real issues going on in Africa where we, even those who can get visa, traveling to the next country is not easy. Man, these are some of the things that we really need to be thinking about when we're talking about Africa Day, you know? And I really want to get into the diaspora and the returning and coming back for opportunities, because that's where I kind of fall, you know? Because Africa Day is not just about people born on the continent, it's also about the children of Africa who are scattered around the world. So I'm going to talk about Ghana specifically, where Ghana courted the diaspora through the year of the return and beyond the return. AP reports that Ghana granted citizenship to 524 diaspora members in a November ceremony, mostly Black Americans, as part of its broader diaspora engagement. You will also remember that they had a citizenship drive back in March. So it was interesting because I did some content around it, and just before I posted it, the diasporan office rescinded because they were overloaded with complaints. I'm going to keep it 100 with you, with complaints. Now, fortunately, I do have some friends within the government, and I was told that there were complaints from specifically diasporan groups, Black American groups, that were feeling like it was, one, too expensive, two, the system, the time frame that they gave, diasporans to get their paperwork in order wasn't enough, and that the fees were too high. So they actually went to the office of the president to have these conversations to try and really sort it out and advocate for those who don't live on the continent, who really wanted to take part of the system. So they paused it. They were able to resume it, which was great to see. And they did eventually do the ceremony. So I'm going to play a clip from the ceremony in March with the Director of Diaspora Affairs, Honorable KOD, Mr. Kofi Darko.
Than a legal designation, it is an embrace. It is a recognition that identity can stretch across borders, yet remain anchored in heritage. For many of you, the path that led here was guided by ancestry, by cultural memory, by a quiet but persistent sense that somewhere on this continent, that was where it all began. Today, that history comes full circle. Ghana is not welcoming strangers. Ghana is receiving family. The door through which you enter today is not one of formality alone, but one of belonging. The nation recognizes that the African diaspora carries with it not only history, but resilience, creativity, and the promise of shared futures. And I dare say that the future of this continent cannot be the same and will not succeed without the diaspora. As citizens, you are going to become partners in the continued shaping of this country, its ideas, its communities, and of course, the very aspirations of Ghana. Your perspectives, experiences, and talents enrich the national fabric. The Ghana you join today is dynamic, evolving, and deeply conscious of the importance of reconnecting with its global family. The Diaspora Affairs Office of the Presidency exists precisely for this purpose, to build enduring bridges between Ghana and her sons and daughters from across the world. And your presence here today strengthens that bridge, and our relationship is going to even get better after today. I can promise you that. Please know this. Your decision to take this step is not taken lightly by us. It carries meaning far beyond documentation. It speaks to trust in Ghana as a place of heritage, opportunity, and shared destiny. We receive that trust with humility and with responsibility as well. From this day forward, may you always know that this land welcomes you not as visitors, but as part of its living story. May you find in Ghana not only your roots, but room to grow, not only history, but also possibility. Above all, may you feel what this movement really, truly represents, that the journey which once led our people away is the same journey that has brought you back to Ghana. And on behalf of His Excellency, the President of the Republic, and on behalf of the Diaspora Affairs Office of the President, the Ministry of the Interior, the Republic of Ghana, I say to you with sincerity and so much pride, welcome home. This is home. Thank you so much.
All right, so you heard it from Honorable Kofi Darko, the Director of Diaspora Affairs in Ghana. And that speech mentioned exactly what a lot of us are looking for. Our parents left Africa for opportunity, so they thought. So they told themselves. So it was shown to them, right? And now a new generation is looking back to Africa for opportunity, right? We're exploring real estate, tourism, media, farming, fashion, tech, education, wellness, culture, and land, right? And the diaspora return shouldn't be treated only as an emotional homecoming. It's also economic strategy, you know? The Office of the President is saying that they're welcoming us back. They want us to be there, right? But what is in place to protect diasporans, right? They want diaspora money, but do they protect diaspora investment, right? We're looking for belonging at the end of the day, and we want to feel safe. We have this enthusiasm, like our age group, millennials and younger, we have this enthusiasm, renewed enthusiasm for Africa and all the possibilities that are there. But once again, our systems in place to make sure that we are protected, that the locals are respected, that we too are not coming there, which is something that this is really for the diasporans now. We are not coming there expecting Africa to be like where we're coming from, only in Africa. Are we bringing our colonial minds to the continent? Because we also have to decolonize our own brains, and that's a process. It's a process. Just because we look like one another doesn't mean that we automatically understand what it's like to be an African living on the continent, right? We still have things that are ingrained within us. No matter how righteous you feel like you're living in the Western world, there's still things that we have to unlearn before we go there, right? But the government, you know, how often are we hearing that diasporans are sending money for land, for development, for real estate, and they're being taken advantage of? Who is there to support diasporans from coming back? And I believe the Diasporan Office is meant partially for that as well, right? Like that's one of their mandates, right? To help those coming into the country to find the resources in order to succeed, right? But we want more transparency. We want trustworthiness, right? It's something that a lot of people worry about. I'm going to a country. Do I know the language? Do I know the people? Who can I trust, right? And so it's not that simple. You know, we need to look at land issues, business registrations, corruption, family expectations, culture shock, citizenship, taxation, and belonging. Like, I remember when I came to Ghana, I used to come to Ghana quite often as a youth with my family. And the one I could remember, I believe it was 2009. So 2009, I would have been in grade 10, I believe. Grade 10 or grade 11. And I remember getting off the plane and the humidity slapped me in my face. Oh, hey. Because, you know, back a day, like, and they still do it now, you will have to walk down the steps. Like, who knows that? Like, I need to see the real OGs. But yeah. you had to walk down the stairs, and the minute the plane door opens, boom! I almost cried. I was holding back tears. Though. I had just left Canada, and now I'm here for the summer. My parents said we had to come, and I was just so shocked. Step one. Then we get out of the airport. That's a whole nother story. The airport's a whole nother thing we'll talk about another time. But then you get on the road and people are standing on the road selling things. It's something that's so normal to me now and actually shows how resilient people are. To me at that time as a youth was like, what are they doing? Why are they banging on the window? Why are people asking for money? Why are people like, what's going on? Because they don't do that over here in Canada. They do, but not like that. So the culture shock of that all, right? And acclimating to what Ghana is. And now I love it. I bring my children back often. I'm there at least twice a year. But are you prepared for that as a diasporan? Ghana's great. When we're going for Dirty December, Easter, summertime vacation, it's great. Come, you spend all your money and you go home and you finish. But the realities of living there, day to day, you can't be Oxford Street, spending all your money eating at breakfast to breakfast, eating at Mama B's jollof joints, the Wache place. You can't be, spending the money the way you do on vacation, right? What are you doing to make money? All of us feel like, oh, I'm going to come with my remote job and it's going to be excellent. I was watching something that Ivy Prosper was saying. Shout out to Ivy Prosper. A lot of diasporans are leaving after 2 years, right? They're not making it even to 2 years. And why is that? The realities hit, things are not what they thought, and what are we doing to protect those of us who are leaving our lives as we know it in the Western world to come back to Africa? How is the government helping us to set up things, businesses? Most of us are entrepreneurs. We're trying to make a life for ourselves. We're looking for opportunity, So these are some of the things that, we really, 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 really have to be talking about and putting systems in place. So it's not just about vibes. You can't just show up in Ghana with vibes. You will not last, though. You will not last. Wahoo. So another thing, too, that is of importance, I think, here is the understanding of wanting to create change. I know for myself, I have political aspirations, whether that means actually holding office or, I won't even say political aspirations. I have changing Africa aspirations. I want to be part of change, positive change for my people, right? And as it sits right now, unless you're born in most countries, I think almost every country, unless you're born in that country, you can't hold public office or not public office. You can't hold, well, because in Canada, actually, you can be, you need to have been born in that country, in Ghana at least, in order to hold public office, to be an MP or higher, right? And so there was some major political controversy around dual citizenship and parliamentary eligibility. So in the Assassin North case involving James Quayson, it raised the issue of whether someone with allegiance to another country can sit in parliament under Ghana's constitution. I kept saying this. For 2 years ago, I was like, you know what? I really want to be the president of Ghana. And why can't I be? Other than the fact that I wasn't actually born in Ghana. Other than that, right? And everyone looked at me crazy. One, I'm a woman, and two, I wasn't born there. But here what? Something is just telling me that the constitution will be changed. And this government is taking steps to do that, So they were talking about not having to renounce your dual citizenship in order to run or hold political office, which is huge. When people talk about constitutional change, diaspora political participation, or allowing dual citizens to serve, the deeper question is Ghana preparing for more global Ghanaian identity? Are we ready for that? What's in place for that too? The theme here, if you guys haven't picked it up, is systems. Do we have systems in place? These ideas are great, but if not done in the right way, chaos, wahala, big problem, right? There's risks to this, right? National security, potential of, spies, all these other things, right? So we really have to think about what it is that we're asking for. And so I had to think about that. While I'm looking for opportunity for myself to come and help better my country, does that door that I hope is opening also open for others who don't have the best intentions, right? So some of the questions I want to ask you all, and I really want to have these conversations in the comments, right? Is Ghana trying to attract more skilled diaspora participation? Is this about democracy, investment, or political power? Should someone with Canadian, American, British, or European citizenship be allowed to run for MP if they are not Ghanaian? And what does loyalty mean in a global world? Would this strengthen Ghana or create new elite advantages? So, leave your comments in the comment section. I will be reading some of the comments a little bit later on, but let's be interactive here. Let's talk with one another, okay? Africa wants diasporan money, but does Africa want diaspora power? Okay, food for thought. Now let's go over now to like African-led investments. So Dangote, wow, one of Africa's richest men, Aliko Dangote, represents one version of African-led industrial power, and we love to see it. Very aspirational. Reuters reported that Dangote increased planned investment in an Ethiopian fertilizer project to more than 4 billion. Okay, part of a wider strategy to boost local production and reduce dependence on imported fertilizer. I saw a young lady, content creator, talking about this, that Africa has to import fertilizer. We imported everything. Africa that needs for nothing, we import everything. Fertilizer. Can you imagine? So he's investing in some of the things that we naturally have and reproduce, so we are not reliant on other countries. His refinery has also become part of a larger debate about African industrialization, fuel imports, monopoly concerns, and national energy security. Reuters has reported that the NNPC accused Dangote's refinery of seeking a fuel monopoly in court filings. Well, Dangote is arguing that local refining should be protected. And this is what we see often, right? When somebody is doing something good for Africa, here come the allegations. What is he really doing? You know why? Because somebody has gone and eaten somebody's the money. So now they have to come and make sure that nobody else comes to unravel, the gravy chain, or whatever Rob Ford used to call it over here in Canada, right? Reuters also reported that Dangote signed a 400 million equipment deal with China's XCMG to support refinery expansion and industrial projects across refining, petrochemicals, agriculture, and infrastructure, right? Africa cannot only be a consumer market, it must be a production market. We are taking in everybody's everything, and we're allowing them to strip us of our raw natural resources for pennies. Let's even take a look at cocoa beans. I think I saw something around that puts Africa as the producer of around 70-something% of the world's cocoa. Yet we only see about 5% of the profits. And what other industries are we seeing this with? Fuel in Nigeria. What about shea butter? I don't think anyone's really thinking about that right now. The shea butter industry is going to grow to more than $33 billion in 2033, by 2033. And you know who knows that? The Indians. You know who knows that? The Chinese. You know who knows that? The Europeans. They know that. In fact, they're in Africa right now. Countries like Nigeria have banned the sale of raw shea nut. Why? Because these countries are coming in, taking the nuts and taking it to their factories to create products, bypassing our whole, and manufacturing is where the money is really at. So to bypass our whole manufacturing process, they're coming to take the nuts. And Ghana they will do it, but they're very slow to do it. And who knows who's eaten, who's handed who envelope. I won't call any names, but these are the types of corruption that we see that really hinder Africa's movement forward. Okay? Because we are allowing a few to eat while the larger population suffers, right? And it's going to take revolutionaries like Ibrahim Traore, who are saying enough. We will industrialize and nationalize our own natural resources. Somebody who said that I do not personally have to embezzle my country's wealth for me and my family, rather for the benefit of my countrymen, all of them. It's going to take real unselfish leaders to do things like that. Okay? We're talking about a better Africa. And we're talking about doing things differently than what's been done before. And here's the real thing, right? I think everybody has ideas about it, but is it because maybe we personally don't have access? We're not seeing all that money. So it's easy from our perspective to say, hey guys, stop eating that money. Stop taking so much. It's easy to stand somewhere and insult somebody. But if you were in their shoes, do you think their integrity would hold true? In everyday life, we think we have beliefs, but when we're tested, do we remain true? Think about it. Maybe it's more difficult than we think, right? So when we're talking about even Africa's billionaires and those calling for, industrialization, are they trying to benefit themselves by building private empires, or are they building African capacity? Or is it possible to do both? In my opinion, they should be trying to do both. What businessman isn't looking for his bottom line as well? Right? Let's be thinking about those things. Africa does not need to become, powerful because the world invests in us. Africa becomes powerful when Africans build, own, refine, and manufacture and export. We got to do all of those things, guys. Everybody else does. We got to do it. We got to do it. All right. So let's move on to France and Mr. Macron. That guy, a couple of months ago, he had tucked his tail between his legs when the Sahel states had kicked them out. Said, France, pack it up. Take your military bases, take your diplomats, and hit the road, Jack. Keep it pushing. Right? We got to talk. Like, with this Africa Day conversation, are old colonial powers gone, or did they just change their language? Because remember, France, French, right? They were in the French colonies, right? They had military bases, embassies in independent nations that were former French colonies, okay? There was a major shift out, and we saw how European economy is dependent on Africa, right? So that left France scrambling, like, hey, yo, okay, what are we gonna do next year? They kicked us out. They know what's up. So this man had a summit in Kenya, Africa Forward Summit, where he announced $27 billion in investment initiative involving French companies and African entities. AP reported that the initiative was framed around mutual investment and sovereign equality. Can we trust them? Come on, guys. Come on, man. Can you imagine? They put on a different wig and come to the other side of the continent, the English-speaking side of Africa. Okay, they've come and redressed and said, "Hey guys, hey big head," and to see Kenyan, and I don't know, are Kenyans? Are they playing along, or are they really at risk of falling into neocolonialism? What's going on, guys? What do you think is going on? Is this part of a strategy? Does everybody really know what's going on? Or are they really allowing France to pander to them? Right? Macron couldn't even help tell it on himself and how he truly feels. He got some backlash at the summit. He stopped the panel. There was questions going on and there was some chatter in the room. He stopped the whole room, right? And the tone in which he used to address those who were speaking, a lot of people called it patronizing and colonial, especially after he said he's a Pan-Africanist. Can you be a Pan-Africanist as a former colonial power? Somebody who's currently bleeding these countries dry with their currencies? Can he said he's a Pan-Africanist though? This Frenchman said he's a Pan-Africanist. I personally feel that France is rebranding after they've lost their influence in parts of West Africa. And I can only hope and pray that our East African brothers and sisters are wise. Because we cannot separate France's relationship with Africa from colonization, military influence, resource extraction, Franc Afrique, and the CFA franc. We can't separate it. Though they one and the same. Okay, they just changed the wig. It's the same thing. Why is France suddenly taking partnership after being pushed out of Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, and other spaces? Why are they talking about that now? Why are they taking partnership as the route now? This, like, personally, I don't believe it's a genuine reset. It's strategic repositioning. Kenya is not a former French colony in the same way as Francophone West Africa. So why East Africa? Why now? Right? Investment isn't automatically bad, but the question is who sets the terms, who owns the assets, who controls the currency, who gets the contracts, and who benefits long term. Remember, the CFA franc, half the reserves of every country that uses the CFA franc has to remain in France. France has said that they need to hold their money in reserves in France for stability. They're saying you can't be trusted with your own money, so we have to hold it for you and control it for you. How can you be partners when somebody thinks that they need to babysit you? How? And East Africa, English-speaking Africa, you're seeing what they've done to our brethren and sisters. I was going to say brethren, our brothers and sisters. And still we say, hey, let's smile with them and dance with them and have football match with them and let them come and spew their nonsense. How come? A colonizer does not become Pan-African because he smiles on an African stage, y'all. And to be honest with you, China and Russia, is there much of a difference between them and the Western world? Are they all playing the same game? When France and the West lose ground, people often say that Africa should turn to China or Russia, but I really want to ask honestly, are they different or are they just competing for the same Africa? You know, I've just seen it so much in Africa. It's so crazy. Like, let's be really real. There's a Chinatown in almost every single country in this world. Do you think you could go to China and do the same thing? Would they allow you to? Huh. I'm not too fond of seeing Russia or China in Africa. Right? And we are seeing Burkina Faso entertain conversations with Russia. I'm interested to really see what Mr. Traore is really thinking with Russia, because to me, it felt as though it was a step backwards. We had taken this huge step to say we don't want the West involved, forget them. We've kicked France, we've said no to the US, and then here comes Russia. But I have to believe that Traore and all that he's doing, there's a master plan. There has to be a master plan here, right? China's role is more infrastructure, loans, roads, rails, ports, technology, mining, manufacturing partnerships, which they're doing to the whole world. So it's not even just Africa, they're taking over the whole world. But Russia's role is more security, military cooperation, Wagner, Africa Corps associations, mining interests, and influence in the Sahel states. Now, is Africa a pawn in the game that they're playing with the West for both Russia, China, and the US and the rest of Europe? Right? Because we see the West's role was aid, right? Because Africa needs charity, right? That was the rhetoric. Military bases, trade terms, debt systems, democracy language, and sanctions. They have NGOs and financial institutions. So the difference is the style and the way in which they're doing it, right? So China and Russia presenting themselves as partners, where the Western world said, you guys need us, we need to help you guys because you guys don't know what you're doing, right? Africa needs to ask itself, what do we own at the end of all of this? If the West is saying democracy, aid, and governance, and China is saying infrastructure, trade, and non-interference, and Russia is saying security, sovereignty, and anti-Western partnership, do we need them? What do we get? Who controls the ports? Who owns the mines? Who trains the army? Who builds the telecom systems? Who holds the debt? Who benefits when African governments are weak? And can we truly partner without becoming dependent? My personal opinion is that Africa doesn't need a new master. Africa needs negotiating power. We are the real superpower once we're able to come together and demand something different, right? If we're serious about African freedom, we also cannot avoid the conversations around currency. I mentioned the CFA franc earlier, because political independence without financial sovereignty is incomplete. The CFA franc remains one of the biggest symbols of post-colonial economic control in parts of Africa. There was conversations about a single African currency. It's been discussed for decades as part of deeper integration, but still hasn't happened. Remember, I said African Union was formed. They signed a charter in 1963, which is not that long ago, but we still haven't been able to come up with that. And what does that mean? If you guys all remember, Gaddafi, he pushed for ideas around African unity, a gold-backed dinar, and stronger African financial independence. A lot of Pan-Africanist commentators were arguing that this made him a threat to Western interests. And guess what they did? Guess what they did? You know what? I'm gonna let you guys look it up because, you know, we know what ended up happening to Gaddafi. And some people speculate this is part of the reasons why he wanted a united Africa, right? He wanted us to have a united currency, which would make Africa powerful, right? Not one single African currency is used to close deals, right? Every single African currency has to be traded out of its own into a different, whether it's the yuan or US dollar or pound or whatever, in order to complete international business, right? Many Pan-African thinkers are arguing that Gaddafi's push for African financial independence, including currency conversations and institutions outside of Western control, made him dangerous to Western interests. So whether people agree with every part of that or argument or not, we can't deny that currency's sovereignty, and that remains central to African power. Do you think it's possible in our lifetime to see this happen? Is this something that we should be talking to our youth about? Is this something that we lay the groundwork for it to be something real at some point? Right? So with that being said, I want to talk to you about the unity piece. Because again, while currency, a proposed African united currency would make it easier for us to trade with one another and help show strength, how can we do that when we don't even look at one another as brothers and sisters? we're talking about borders and unity and currency, but we have to be honest with xenophobia. And it's not just a South African issue. I mentioned earlier, Ghana, Nigeria, we've seen it before. South Africa is the most visible example as right now. It's loud, but the mindset appears across the continent. And it's not an African issue per se either. Like here in Toronto and Canada as well, we have that sentiment that, you know, other people are coming here, they're stealing our jobs you don't even really want to do. They're coming here, they're ruining the way we drive here, right? They're taking our housing, and you know, it's the same thing. When I dropped my South African video, I was going back and forth with somebody, and they mentioned that, you know, you're not living in South Africa, you don't know what it's like. Those issues are not unique to South Africa. Poverty, 31 or 32% unemployment rate, housing issues, healthcare issues, and you guys are attributing them to who you deem to be foreigners, rather than looking at the governments who are unable to provide stability for their citizens. And I hear you in saying that if that's the case, then why are we allowing others to come in? But that allows you to place blame on those coming in who are also looking for opportunity to do something different, to build another part of the continent, rather than holding accountable the system. And it's entirely possible that we're doing that because that seems like a smaller undertaking. It's easier to blame the Nigerian in South Africa who has that shop, who's making more money than me, and I was born in this country, than say the leaders who are in power are eating the money. What can we do about that? If not this leader, the next one coming will do the same thing. It can be overwhelming. It can feel like that nothing will change. So let's change what we can change, which is the person down the street. You know, Ghanaians complain about Nigerians, Nigerians complain about Ghanaians, South Africans complain about Zimbabweans and Nigerians, North Africans discriminate against Sub-Saharan Africans, East and West Africans stereotype each other. We all do it. And one thing I will say is, I think even all of what, like even my, like we're all guilty of it to some degree, right? We make jokes. Ghanaians and Nigerians have this gist, you know, Ghana must go, no, Nigeria must go first, you know. It's very real and ingrained, and a lot of us don't even really know why. I don't even think a lot of people my age or younger actually even know the story of like the mass deportation of Ghanaians from Nigeria and the mass deportations of Nigerians from Ghana and why we have this rivalry. But what I will say is, when we're outside in places like Canada, the US, we're Africans. That's one thing I'll say. If I'm outside, I will never stand for somebody insulting a fellow African, not a Nigerian, not a South African, not a Kenyan. Nah. You know? We gotta do better with one another and think about how the role we are individually playing in the spreading of xenophobia and in the ideologies around others, right? So there's a lot of videos on the ADNC YouTube page about South Africa and all that's going on there. I'm going to talk about xenophobia in other parts because I don't want South Africans to think that we think it's just them. We know, but we're highlighting what's going on in South Africa because guess what? Instagram is showing us all. It is showing us all, you know, and what we are seeing is that other countries within Africa are standing up for their citizens. And, you know, Ghana was saying, hey, if you want to come back home, come, we will pay for your relocation. We will give you some money to start something. Just come back. It's not safe for you there. Come back. And that's how we would want the governments to respond. However, we need to think about the bigger picture and what's happening in these individual countries and why we don't see each other as brother and sister. If we can't welcome each other, how can we claim Pan-Africanism? Right now, we do have very real borders, but the dehumanization of others who look like us, well, that's a choice that you're making every single day when you choose to degrade others because you don't feel like they belong. Scapegoating your fellow African rather than holding those really responsible to account. So for me, Africa can't, ask the diaspora to come home while Africans are telling each other to go home. Can you imagine? Africa cannot tell the diaspora to come home while Africans are telling each other to go home. Write that down somewhere, folks. Write that down somewhere. So after all of that I've said, I don't want to end in frustration. Like, Africa Day still matters because Africa is not finished. Africa is being built right now, and we are all a part of it. Us having conversations here for the Black Americans that really represent ADNC, we are looking to build with you all. We are wanting to help build Africa, our relationships around the world. Africans are building industries, creative economies, tech, fashion, film, tourism, alcohol, agriculture, and infrastructure. The diaspora is returning with skills, capital, content, networks, and curiosity. We've gone to the Western world where our parents gave birth to us. We went to the universities. We learned. And now it's time for us to bring back the same way they extracted from Africa to build this society. We are also going to take from here, decolonize, of course, and go and build our continent back up. We as young Africans are more connected than ever. Mobility is leverage. Go watch that video I posted. We're making more money. We are wanting more. We're asking more questions. The time is now. African business leaders are investing in production in industries within Africa, not just taking their money outside of the continent. Okay, they're investing at home and saying, if I can do this, so can you. They could be making a lot more money doing it other places, but they're saying Africa is home. I want to build. Let's build together. So the question is, can our political systems catch up to the people? Systems. Africa Day cannot just be a celebration of where we come from. It has to become a commitment to what we are building next. All right. So I want to read some of the comments here before we end off. Sister B says, as Bob Marley said, don't let them fool you or even try to school you. Okay. Carl 3240 says, Africa cannot afford to trust any European countries. Since when have they been trustworthy? Big facts. Big facts. Okay. And as we were talking about the conversation with France, what they're doing in Kenya, somebody said, Sister B said, and they've changed clothes. Okay, they've changed clothes, changed costumes. Sorry, they've changed costumes. Let's read two more. Africa, Carl 3240, Africa having one currency is the best idea. Africa just has to weed out the people that are opposed to it. Yeah, but you know how the Western world and other powers at B infiltrate, Yeah, it's a very scary place. Jerry Prophet says, thank you. Appreciate you guys. I really do appreciate you guys for being here. So, as I said, make sure that you guys head on over to my YouTube page and type in Efia and join me. I have so much content. I'm promising you, I'm being more consistent on that page. We're going to see, I'm just in Europe. I want to show you guys what we were doing there and having those conversations with family. Did some interviews with Black people in Europe to kind of understand how they feel about being Blacks outside of the continent. So make sure you guys check out my YouTube page. And also, check out my Instagram page at Fifi the Queen 92 on Instagram. Make sure you guys follow. A lot of interesting day-to-day content on there, travels and engagement on there. We can chat. Send me stuff. If you want things talked about on this channel as well, send me things. We can have spirited conversations in the comments. All right. So family, once again, happy Africa Day 2026 and my kente. I came here with my natural hair, everything natural, okay? Just to show my love for Africa. We talked about a lot of the issues happening because we got to be really, really real. Now, it's late. My president of Ghana said after 7 p.m., don't eat again, go and drink some tea and go to bed. That one, sir, I cannot do. I need to celebrate with some jollof rice. So I'm going to go do that. And I hope that you all have a great rest of your evening. Thank you for joining me on the African Diaspora News Channel. And this has been my first live stream. Thank you all for joining me and have a great evening. Off to the next one. Peace and love.